The crackle of static pierced the silence of the dimly lit control room. Zix's fingers froze over the keyboard, her breath catching in her throat. The air, thick with the scent of stale coffee and ozone, seemed to vibrate with anticipation. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her eyes wide behind smudged glasses. Cale, hunched over a bank of monitors, grunted in response. His weathered face, illuminated by the soft glow of screens, creased with concentration. "Probably just another burst of cosmic background radiation. We've been chasing ghosts for months, Zix." But Zix knew better. She'd spent years fine-tuning her ears to the symphony of space, learning to distinguish the mundane from the extraordinary. This was different. This was what they'd been waiting for. Her fingers flew across the keys, initiating a series of commands. The room hummed to life, banks of servers whirring as they processed the incoming data. On the main screen, a jagged line began to form, pulsing with an alien rhythm. "Holy shit," Cale breathed, pushing back from his station. "Is that?" Zix nodded, her throat tight. "It's the Voyager. After all this time, it's still out there." The Voyager probe, launched nearly a century ago, had long since fallen silent. Its final transmissions, received decades earlier, had been nothing more than faint whispers from the edge of the solar system. But now, impossibly, it was speaking again. As they watched, the signal grew stronger, more coherent. Symbols began to scroll across the screen, a language neither human nor machine. Zix's heart raced as she initiated the decryption protocols they'd developed for just this moment. "Alert the others," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're about to make history." Cale hesitated, his hand hovering over the comm panel. "Are you sure about this, Zix? If we're wrong." She met his gaze, saw the fear and excitement mirrored in his eyes. "We can't keep this to ourselves. Whatever Voyagers found out there, the world needs to know." With a nod, Cale pressed the button. Alarms blared throughout the complex, rousing scientists from their bunks and bringing security teams to high alert. Within minutes, the control room was packed, the air electric with tension and the mingled sense of sweat and anticipation. Dr. Ilara Venn, the project director, pushed her way to the front. Her silver hair was disheveled, her lab coat hastily thrown over pajamas. "Report," she barked, eyes fixed on the main screen. Zix swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the weight of the moment. "It's Voyager, ma'am. We're receiving a transmission unlike anything we've seen before. The signal strength is off the charts and the data. It's not just telemetry, there's a message." Ilara's eyes widened. "A message? From whom?" Before Zix could answer, the decryption algorithm completed its work. The alien symbols on the screen flickered and transformed, resolving into recognizable text. A collective gasp rippled through the room as the message appeared. "We are not alone. The universe is a lie." Silence fell, broken only by the soft beeping of equipment and the ragged breathing of those present. Zix felt a chill run down her spine, her mind reeling as she tried to process the implications. Ilara was the first to recover. "Cale, verify the signal's origin. Zix, run a full spectrum analysis. I want to be absolutely certain this is genuine before we take any further action." As the room erupted into frenzied activity, Zix couldn't tear her eyes away from the screen. 6 words that would change everything. 6 words that challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe and humanity's place in it. Hours passed in a blur of data analysis and heated debates. Coffee cups piled up, their bitter dregs a poor substitute for sleep. Outside, the first hints of dawn painted the sky, but inside the windowless control room, time seemed to stand still. Zix's eyes burned as she pored over the signal data for the 100th time. Every test, every analysis confirmed what she'd known in her gut from the first moment. This was real. Voyager, against all odds, had made contact from the depths of interstellar space. "It doesn't make sense," Cale muttered, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. "How is it still functioning after all this time? And that signal strength. It's like it's right next door, not billions of miles away." Zix shook her head, at a loss for answers. The laws of physics as they understood them couldn't explain what they were seeing. It was as if Voyager had stumbled upon some hidden pocket of the universe where the rules were different. Dr. Venn's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. All right, people. I've just gotten off the phone with the president. We have less than an hour before this goes public. I need theories, and I need them now. The room fell silent, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on every shoulder. It was Zix who finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. What if it's all a simulation? All eyes turned to her, a mix of confusion and disbelief on their faces. Zix took a deep breath and continued, the words tumbling out in a rush. Think about it. The signal strength, the impossible longevity of the probe. What if Voyager didn't just send us a message? What if it found the edge of our reality? The silence that followed was deafening. Zix could almost hear the gears turning in her colleagues' minds as they grappled with the implications. Kale was the first to respond, his voice gruff with emotion. You're suggesting our entire universe, everything we know and have ever experienced, is some kind of, computer program? Zix nodded slowly. It would explain the anomalies we're seeing. If we're in a simulation, whoever or whatever is running it could have altered the parameters to allow this message through. Dr. Ven's face was ashen. Do you have any idea what you're proposing, Dr. Zix? The philosophical and existential implications alone. I know it sounds crazy, Zix interrupted, a note of desperation in her voice. But look at the data, nothing else fits. As the debate raged on, Zix felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. Whatever the truth was, whatever lay beyond the boundaries of their perceived reality, humanity was about to take its first steps into a new era of understanding. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of press conferences, government briefings, and global panic. The news of Voyager's message spread like wildfire, sparking protests, religious revivals, and a surge in doomsday preppers. The scientific community was split, with some embracing Zix simulation theory, while others scrambled for more conventional explanations. Through it all, Zix and her team worked tirelessly, analyzing every scrap of data from the Voyager transmission. They knew that hidden within the signal could be the key to unraveling the mystery of their existence. It was on the fifth day, as Zix was poring over a particularly dense section of code, that she noticed something odd, a pattern repeating at regular intervals throughout the transmission. At first, she dismissed it as an artifact of the decryption process, but as she dug deeper, a chill ran down her spine. "Kale," she called out, her voice trembling. "I need you to look at this." Her colleague shuffled over, dark circles under his eyes testament to the long hours they'd been pulling. "What have you got?" Zix pointed to her screen. "See this pattern? It's not random, it's a message within the message." Kale leaned in, his brow furrowed in concentration. As understanding dawned, his face paled. "Is that?" Zix nodded grimly. "Binary, and it's counting down." The realization hit them both simultaneously. This wasn't just a message, it was a timer. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. Government officials were notified, contingency plans were set in motion, and the world held its breath as the countdown ticked inexorably towards zero. As the final seconds approached, Zix found herself in the control room, surrounded by her colleagues and a phalanx of military personnel. The air was thick with tension, the only sound the soft beeping of equipment and the ragged breathing of those present. 10 seconds, Kale announced, his voice barely above a whisper. Zix closed her eyes, her mind racing. What would happen when the countdown reached zero? Would their world simply blink out of existence? Would they wake up to find themselves in some higher reality? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A blinding flash of light filled the room, accompanied by a sound like the tearing of reality itself. Zix felt a moment of vertigo, as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her feet. And then, nothing. Zix opened her eyes, blinking in confusion. The control room looked exactly the same. Her colleagues were still there, looking as bewildered as she felt. Is that it?" someone asked hesitantly. Before anyone could respond, every screen in the room flickered to life. The image that appeared made Zix's breath catch in her throat. It was Earth, but not as they knew it. The continents were different, the oceans a strange, iridescent purple. And in the background, barely visible but unmistakable, was a vast, lattice-like structure that seemed to encompass the entire planet. A voice, unlike anything Zix had ever heard, filled the room. It was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It simply was. Greetings, inhabitants of Earth Simulation 42B. Your trial period has come to an end. We hope you have found this experience enlightening. Please prepare for extraction and debriefing. The room erupted into chaos. People were shouting, crying, some even laughing hysterically. Zix stood rooted to the spot, her mind struggling to process what was happening. They had been right. The universe, their universe, was a lie. But the truth was far stranger than any of them could have imagined. As the voice continued to speak, outlining the parameters of their extraction, Zix felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. They were about to step into a reality beyond their wildest dreams or nightmares. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Government leaders from around the world convened in emergency sessions. Religious leaders called for calm, or in some cases, proclaimed the end times, and social media exploded with theories, fears, and gallows humor. Through it all, Zix and her team worked feverishly to understand as much as they could about their situation. The voice, which had identified itself as the system administrator, had provided them with a limited interface to ask questions and receive information about the nature of their simulated reality. So let me get this straight, Kale said, rubbing his temples. We're not just in a simulation, we're in a sort of educational program. Zix nodded, her eyes never leaving the screen where new information was constantly scrolling. From what I can gather, yes, Earth Simulation 42B seems to be one of many simulated realities designed to, well, I'm not entirely sure, train, educate, evaluate. Dr. Venn, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since the revelation, spoke up. But evaluate who? Us? Are we real or are we just part of the simulation? It was the question that had been nagging at all of them. The system administrator had been frustratingly vague on this point, citing ethical protocols that prevented full disclosure until after the extraction process. I don't know, Zix admitted, but I think we have to operate under the assumption that our consciousness, our sense of self, is real, even if our bodies and our memories are part of the simulation. The implications were staggering. If they were real consciousnesses placed into a simulated environment, what did that mean for their understanding of life, death, and the nature of existence itself? As they grappled with these philosophical quandaries, the practical realities of their situation began to set in. The system administrator had informed them that the extraction process would begin in exactly 48 hours. What that process entailed and what awaited them on the other side remained a mystery. Governments around the world scrambled to maintain order. Some leaders called for unity in the face of this unprecedented situation, while others retreated into bunkers, convinced that the extraction was a euphemism for annihilation. In the streets, reactions varied wildly. There were riots and looting in some areas, while in others, people came together in a spirit of shared humanity. Impromptu parties sprang up as some decided to live their last hours in this reality to the fullest. Others sought solace in prayer or meditation, preparing themselves spiritually for whatever lay ahead. Through it all, Zix and her team worked tirelessly, trying to glean every bit of information they could from the system administrator's interface. They knew that whatever knowledge they could gather might be crucial in navigating the new reality they were about to enter. As the hours ticked by, Zix found herself drawn to a particular line of questioning. If their world was a simulation, what was the purpose? Why create such an elaborate illusion, complete with billions of years of simulated history and evolution? The answers she received were tantalizingly vague, hinting at grand cosmic experiments and the nature of consciousness itself. But one response stood out, sending a chill down her spine. The parameters of Earth Simulation 42B were designed to test the development of intelligence and empathy in a resource-limited environment. Your species' responses to various stimuli have been most illuminating. Zix sat back, her mind reeling. They had been lab rats in a cosmic experiment. Every war, every scientific breakthrough, every act of kindness or cruelty, all had been observed and analyzed by some unfathomable intelligence. As she shared this information with her colleagues, The mood in the control room grew somber. The weight of their entire species' history, real or simulated, pressed down on them. "So what happens now?" Kale asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do we just cease to exist when this extraction happens?" Dr. Venn shook her head. "We can't think like that. Whatever awaits us, we have to face it with the same courage and curiosity that's driven our species, simulated or not, to explore and understand our universe." Zix nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "She's right. We may be leaving behind everything we've ever known, but we're also on the brink of discovering a whole new reality. We need to be ready." As the final hours approached, a strange calm settled over the world. People gathered with loved ones, shared meals, and told stories. It was as if humanity, faced with the end of everything they knew, had collectively decided to face it with dignity. In the control room, Zix and her team made their final preparations. They had compiled all the data they could, written reports summarizing their findings, and even prepared a sort of time capsule of human knowledge and culture, on the off chance they would be allowed to take it with them. As the countdown to extraction entered its final minutes, Zix found herself standing before the main screen, watching the timer tick down. Kale stood to her right, Dr. Venn to her left. Around them, the room was packed with scientists, government officials, and military personnel. "Whatever happens," Zix said softly, "it's been an honor working with all of you." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. As the final seconds ticked away, Zix took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever came next. The timer hit 0. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the world around them began to shimmer and dissolve. Zix felt a strange sensation, as if her very being was being unraveled and rewoven. The control room faded away, replaced by a vast, shimmering expanse that defied description. Colors Zix had never seen before danced at the edges of her vision. Shapes that shouldn't be possible twisted and turned in the distance. And then, a presence, vast, ancient, and utterly alien. When it spoke, Zix felt the words in her very being rather than hearing them with her ears. "Welcome, inhabitants of Earth Simulation 42B. Your journey of discovery has only just begun." As Zix's consciousness expanded to encompass this new reality, she felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. The universe, the real universe, was stranger and more wonderful than they could have ever imagined. The alien presence enveloped them, a vast consciousness that seemed to stretch across dimensions. Zix felt her perception expanding, as if the limits of her human mind were being gently but inexorably pushed aside. "You have questions," the presence communicated, not in words but in pure concepts that bloomed in their minds. "We will answer, but first you must understand." In an instant, Zix and her companions were immersed in a flood of information. They saw the true nature of the multiverse, an infinite tapestry of realities, each one a simulation running on an unimaginably advanced substrate. They understood that their Earth, their entire universe, was but one thread in this cosmic weave. "We are the architects," the presence explained. "We create these simulations to study the emergence of consciousness, to understand the fundamental nature of existence itself." Kale's voice, somehow both distant and intimately close, echoed through the void. "But why? What's the purpose?" The answer came not in words, but in a profound sense of longing and curiosity that resonated through their very beings. The architects, for all their power and knowledge, were seekers too. They created these simulations in an attempt to understand themselves, to unravel the mystery of their own existence. As this revelation settled over them, Zix felt a surge of empathy for these vast, lonely beings. "What happens to us now?" she asked, her thoughts rippling out into the cosmic expanse. The response was a wave of reassurance. They were not to be discarded or destroyed. Instead, they were being offered a choice. "You may return to your simulation, your memories of this encounter erased, to live out your lives in blissful ignorance," the architects communicated. "Or you may join us, become part of something greater, help us in our quest for understanding. But know this, there is no returning from this path." You will transcend your human limitations, but you will also leave behind all that you once were. The weight of the decision pressed down on them. Zix looked to her companions, seeing the same mix of fear and wonder she felt reflected in their essence. Dr. Ven's thoughts reached out, tinged with a lifetime of scientific curiosity. If we join you, will we be able to continue our research? To explore and learn? A sense of affirmation washed over them. They would have access to knowledge and experiences beyond their wildest imaginations. Kale's essence pulsed with concern. What about our loved ones, our world? Will they be okay without us? The architect's response was gentle but firm. The simulation would continue with or without them. Their absence would be explained, their roles filled by others. The great tapestry of existence would go on weaving its patterns. As they grappled with the enormity of the choice before them, Zix felt a clarity she had never known before. All her life, she had sought to understand the universe, to push the boundaries of human knowledge. Now, she was being offered the chance to do that on a scale she had never dreamed possible. "I'll do it," she said, her decision rippling out through the cosmic consciousness. "I want to join you, to learn, to understand." One by one, her companions made their choices. Some, like Dr. Ven, chose to join the architects in their grand quest for knowledge. Others, like Kale, decided to return to the simulation, to live out their lives among the people and places they loved. As those who chose to return faded from their expanded awareness, Zix felt a pang of loss, but it was quickly overwhelmed by a sense of anticipation for what was to come. The architect's presence enveloped those who had chosen to stay, and Zix felt herself beginning to change. Her consciousness expanded, merging with the vast cosmic intelligence. She saw the birth and death of universes, experienced time and space in ways her human mind could never have comprehended. And yet, at her core, she remained Zix. Her curiosity, her passion for discovery, her fundamental self persisted, even as she transcended her human limitations. As she merged fully with the architects, becoming one with the cosmic consciousness while still retaining her individuality, Zix understood that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The universe, no, the multiverse, was vast and full of wonders, and she had an eternity to explore it. Her last human thought before she fully embraced her new existence was one of gratitude. Gratitude for the life she had lived, for the discoveries she had made, and for the endless possibilities that now lay before her. And then, with a sense of exhilaration that defied description, Zix let go of her last human limitations and soared into the infinite. In the control room back on Earth, alarms blared as monitoring equipment registered a massive surge of unknown energy. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, everything went quiet. The scientists who had chosen to return found themselves back at their stations, a strange sense of loss and wonder lingering in their minds. Kale looked around, his eyes misting as he realized who was missing. But even as he mourned their absence, he felt a sense of peace. Wherever Zix and the others were now, he knew they were embarking on the greatest adventure imaginable. As the world outside the control room began to wake up, unaware of the cosmic drama that had unfolded, Kale turned to his console. There was work to be done, discoveries to be made, and who knew? Perhaps one day, humanity would find its way to the stars on its own terms, ready to join the grand cosmic dance. The last signal from Voyager had changed everything and nothing. The universe was vaster and stranger than they had ever imagined. But the human spirit of exploration and discovery remained undimmed. As the sun rose on a new day, Kale smiled to himself. Somewhere out there, beyond the boundaries of their reality, Zix was exploring wonders beyond imagination. And here on Earth, life went on, full of its own everyday miracles. The story of humanity, it seemed, was far from over. It was, in fact, just beginning.